But I think the understanding of technology and what technology brings to a solution, how it can add value to a solution, that mindset, I think, is really important, and that's something we should focus on.
Welcome to a brand new episode of our podcast, Human and AI, Mind, Machines, and the Gradient Descent.
Thanks that you tuned in again to listen and to learn. We are Uli and Avery, and we're super stoked to welcome today's Genius Mind, Peter Dodell. Peter is the head of tools and processes for global compensation and benefits at the new Siemens Energy company. He says about himself that he has a desire to innovate by implementing creative and suitable solutions. Isn't that awesome? So Peter, thanks so much for joining in today. So how are you doing and where do we catch you at the moment?
Yeah, Avery, thanks for having me. And at the moment, I'm actually really busy. We're going for the first go live of our new compensation and benefits platform the next upcoming month, and there are a lot of things to do. So, of course, I'm working from home in the home office due to the COVID-19 situation, but it works out pretty good for me.
Sounds exciting. Can you maybe quickly describe yourself? So who are you and how did your path actually lead you to Siemens? And I guess that means to Team Purple.
Yeah, so my name is Peter. I'm 36, having a wife and two kids, living in the south of Munich. And actually, I was in KPMG for a short time in management consulting due to my desire to optimize processes and go for the newest innovations that you most of the times find in consulting. But after the probation period, actually, I was then brought to Siemens. So actually, I quit on the last day of my probation and went to Siemens since I got a really good offer in the equity team. 2012 it was, and in that time I was responsible for the share matching plan. And after some time, I got more into the accounting topics. I led several big IT projects, including the new global plan management tool that was developed over a period of 2.5 years and is now actually handling Siemens Energy, Siemens Healthineers, and Siemens AG from an equity perspective. So all the equity processes are basically operated in there. I did the implementation of the Siemens profit sharing from an IT perspective. And after that time, I decided to see some new things. So that was the time when I joined the Finance Innovation Lab in the CFR 5, so some years ago, to go even more into innovation and to even get closer to technology and bringing technology into processes to create value. And that was actually also the time where I, the first time, got to know Uli and this team and all the topics. I remember that very well. So really good talks and really good projects back then. But then after 2 years, like trying out all those interesting technologies and projects, I went back to my old boss and trying now to bring innovation to Siemens Energy, HR, Comp and Ben, that meaning that we are now trying to, with a greenfield, creating a new application platform, bringing data together and bringing value to Team Purple.
Sounds good. You mentioned before that you're currently in the home office because of Corona, of course. How do you experience the current situation? What is it that gets you and your team motivated? And how do you cope with this challenge?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a hard situation for everybody. Some people like the home office. I like it for myself because I don't have to travel to work roughly 1.5 hours now on a single track, and that saves me a lot of time. Other people don't like it at home because maybe they don't have the space, and of course also sometimes children around. That makes it not easier to be in meetings and stay concentrated. But actually, I think for everybody we have enough flexibility to find a workaround, right? You can sometimes meet your colleagues at work. You can arrange days where you go in. You can have regular meetings, also not talking about business, but having like social interaction with your colleagues and discuss how everybody's feeling and how everybody's motivated. Or if you're down, you can try to motivate each other. So I think at the moment, my team and myself, we're doing a pretty good job. We have like daily short calls and not only about business topics. Of course, it helps to stay connected on business topics even on that short cycle, but it also helps just to chat and to see if everybody is still fine and how everybody copes with the challenges, right? So I think I'm doing pretty well, and also my team is, hopefully, and I believe so, and I hope everybody else is as well.
I think there's also always positive and negative side on there. And a positive side, like I was super surprised how well everybody, cope with the challenge, embracing, this uncertainty, embracing this totally digitalization full in now. And also, stuck in home office in different formats, right? It's great. But if we talk it, since we're on AI podcast, right? So I guess, we are coming from a hype of, consumer platforms, right? Amazon's and Google search engines and advertising, promotion, personalization on offerings, stuff like that, right? And I guess if one thinks about Siemens, then they think about, industry 4.0, what is AI in industrial space? What is industrial AI? But I guess, a natural reflex is that the next frontier of AI is actually, maybe your own salary, your own promotion prediction, right? How far would you go? Or would you trust machine learning algorithms, to be the only, supervision for HR companion to manage, I don't know, autonomously, right? HR task, target setting, salary negotiations. Would you trust, like, okay, the definition if someone gets promoted is entirely done by data analytics or by machine learning, say? Is that something you would say, yeah, we'll soon be able, we need to trust these systems? What's your stake on that?
That's a really long and good question, actually. I think from my perspective in the corporate functions, we often are not so far into technology and innovations as we are in the business, because there is certainly more need to embed all that intelligence and that value creation into the products to be successful on the markets. And on the corporate functions, it's often around operating standardized processes and bringing service to businesses and to regions. And sometimes the real process optimization and going that next step to having that state-of-the-art technology in place is not the most important one. But I think it should become that those technologies get embedded into those processes as well on a better scale, meaning that we need to bring data together, that actually people in a change management process will be able to trust algorithms and to trust proposals from systems, making maybe not the decisions on a certain topic, but getting the proposals that somebody should get promoted, for example, or what could be a meaningful salary increase for a person. But I think before that step, we need to really tackle our data processes, our data quality. We need to bring the data together in a place where this is possible and where we can rely on a good data quality before we can actually start the change management and the thinking of people that AI could make those proposals, right?
So that means in AI comes benefits aspects, right? You think it's, as soon as we hit the data readiness, let's say, level on a mature level, right? Then we are able actually to predict somehow the performance and maybe also, who to hire, who to promote on the people's scale, on the people analytics scale. Is that doable?
I think the algorithm alone depends on how it's fed, how good the data quality is it's based on, or how good it's trained, right? So I think in the transformation period, certainly there will be some input needed, some experience for managers, some soft values that come into place that are hard to bring in from a data perspective, from a history perspective. But I think that the field of HR data is so broad in terms of what kind of data you're having, right? And what kind of data you would be able to track, that it certainly would make sense to try out use cases with AI and to see basically how good the technology compares to manual decisions, right?
Mm-hmm. Obviously, it comes very close, right? If you move more towards, automating transaction work, if you predict somehow performance, but also expectations, interesting, right? It may comes with a flavor like it provides more fairness, because at the moment you have the trustee. The trustee is your manager, right? And the manager assesses the performance of employees and also, grades, upgrades, or, empowering, a hard thing to do for algorithms, I guess. But, on given his empathy and given the history of engagement we had with employees, how would you, what kind of data is be needed in capturing these kinds empathetics and engagements, flaws, and great experiences, right? Is that doable, or can it be nailed down on such a level that's numbers, encoded in numbers?
I think the problem is that the quality of data you will be creating or you will be needing for this is depending on how good it's maintained. So how good is the process that a manager or an employee actually creates that data by, let's say, having a survey, having a certain process in place, right? And how good is the user experience? How do those people, like the manager and his employee, trust in that system so they give actually an honest feedback? What's really important, because if you have fake data, you will have fake outputs from the algorithm, right? So I think it's not only the technology and the data you need for it, but also the process to bring everybody along to participate in the process, to participate actually in creating the data that is necessary to then benefit from the result. And the understanding of this topic is even more important than actually the technology itself.
That's a very interesting perspective. But if we have a look like on the overall HR domain, do you see a great impact of AI there? So are there any use cases that come to your mind, maybe externally, that you're excited about or that you think are super important or making a great impact?
Yeah. So I didn't see any like external use case yet that I'm really excited about, but I think we have many interesting fields, especially when we will start to combine data within HR or even data from HR with other departments, right? Meaning, for example, to be more sensitive about retention cases in the company and to connect basically compensation data with survey data regarding happiness of the employees, and to make theories regarding could a bad compensation package be something that leads to employee not being happy anymore, and also then bringing in performance data. Nevertheless, how performance is measured, right? But somehow to bring in performance data and to see, okay, how does this affect my top performers or my top performers in a certain region, right? And how can I do actually measures to make my top performers and the people I definitely want to have in my company to push the company forward, how can I make them more happy? Right? And could compensation be one of those components that are influencing that happiness?
Yeah, definitely. That it also has an effect, like maybe on the motivation or performance in the end. So in your previous role, you were one of the first to explore the capabilities of natural language interfaces and bot automation for the accounting domain. So what was the path or the challenges that arose on your way to push digitalization in that field?
So actually, that was a very exciting field. I'm still very thankful to my old colleagues that we had the flexibility to work in this topic very freely and to explore it and to test basically how we can use that technology within a certain field within finance to create value for everybody involved in that processes. I think it was still sometimes not that easy because it was a very fresh technology. Everybody was talking about IBM Watson and other basically packages you could use for that. And I think also it was starting up to have the bot community in the AI lab. So there was a lot of good exchange also with people from business and other departments. But it was a lot of exploration that needed to be done. And every time something is that new, you always have not the biggest support from management, because nevertheless, you still need to present a use case at the end to invest a certain money in a technology or in a new process, right? Or to an enhancement. But nevertheless, we created some very good chatbots that also went productive, some of them. And I think it was a great exploration for finance to see what the technology can add to the business processes. And I'm definitely sure that The colleagues of mine still being in the Finance Innovation Lab, greetings to Sven Beckmann and Tim Westhoff, they are continuing this path and they are following up on this. And I'm certain the next month something will happen there. So I don't want to spoil it, but they are still tracking that path down and having some great ideas and following up on that.
That sounds exciting for sure. So we will stay tuned about that. So pushing AI and automation solution probably also poses challenges on also the team side. For the colleagues, it might be difficult with regards to upskilling. Maybe you need a different mindset or more agility. So can you maybe share some of your challenges, but also best practices that you collected throughout your experiences? So what does it mean to push AI in the area of HR?
So I think regarding AI, we are still in the very, very beginning of exploring that field in HR. I think, like I said before, we are still on some of the basics regarding data readiness, like Oli said it, but upskilling and mindset is something really individual. So it's not bad to start with upskilling and creating the right mindset and or trying to create the right mindset in a bigger scale to be then ready when we actually also have the data in place and we have the processes aligned so we can start tackling the problems with AI and create value by bringing AI use cases into the area of HR. I think the upskilling is a really important part because for me it was always very easy to try out new technologies and to get into that field. And I think somebody that is not that much into technology as I am will sometimes have a bit more hard time to understand how a graph database works or how AI works in general with all the different facets it has, right? So I think the upskilling and the understanding of technology is important. We don't need everybody to be able to create algorithms. We don't need everybody to create apps and like state-of-the-art technology solutions. But I think the understanding of technology and what technology brings to a solution, how it can add value to a solution, that mindset, I think, is really important, and that's something we should focus on.
True. How do you do that, right? It's a so natural reflex of, is then, I don't know, get an intro to flow-based analytics flows, RapidMiner, NIME, and these kinds of aspects, right? But these hit then, even though you as analytics expert, right, how to cope with that and, okay, get the hands a bit dirty, it's just to get a rough understanding. But this hits also, right, colleagues who, used to say, like, hey, we always did it with Excel, right? we always do it, right? I save my files on my local file and not sharing anything, right? How do you do that? Do you do classes, tutorials, or how do you incentivize that? People, hey, get a glimpse on, on the opportunities that are there, also with the toolings, right?
I think first of all, what I normally do is I create a vision, right? I tell people where I'm actually heading to and what I think would be the right direction to bring up a discussion and to see how basically what are the interests of the people and what is their vision. And I think in the next step, it's really important when we are creating pilots, for example, and using, for example, NIME to explain it. What is actually different to Excel and where are the advantages and what makes lives easier when using our NIME solution, but not the Excel solution. And this transparency at the end creates understanding. And once the colleagues are trying such a solution or are seeing what we're building now in the new platform, it's still, of course, not always easy to convince people to use a new process or a new tool. But as long as they see the advantage of it, it makes it a lot easier.
Speaking of data readiness and maturity, right? That's, it doesn't matter in which vertical, in which businesses you look in, right? That's still a super, super crazy challenge, right? It's still the challenge for all large organizations, how to get my, company data ready, right? From a process improvement, from cleansing process, also legal process, right? And stuff like that. So obviously also a natural reflex of large corporation is like, hey, we need a certain kind of roles, right? We need, back in the days, they discussed the chief AI officer, right? And for certain aspects, a lot of things is that there are certain kinds of, data roles, like a chief data officer is needed. Do you think that in these kinds of positions, corporates, large corporates would need it, or businesses would need such a role in order to accelerate a bit of the maturity, the data visioning, the data, focus in an organization? Or do we have every instrument in there? What is your take on that?
Yeah, at the moment, I think in that topic, of course, we have potential for optimization. I'm not sure if like a new role like a chief data officer would be the solution to the current situation or to make it better. Because, of course, with such an office and the employees behind it, you will create new processes and maybe sometimes also some bureaucracy. Well, for once, I think we need a mindset that data is not within a silo. Data should belong to everybody within a company, and everybody that is able to create a really good use case out of data, even if it's from another department or another function or area, should be able to do so as long as it creates value for the company. That is one point. And I think we need kind of some kind of a standardized process where that data is brought together, where we have a certain rule regarding data quality and data cleansing to make that data available to everybody. I heard from a company that has a really cool procedure in terms of having sandbox environments where people having a use case get the sandbox environments with all technology available, with like example sets from data available from every function and business and region. And it's like playing data, right? They can try out their use case and see actually if it's worth it. And once it's worth, they get full access to the data, fully supported by IT and management to make it happen. And I think that's something I really admire, and I really would also like to see more in companies.
Yeah, that sounds too good to be true for machine learning gig. I know how hard it is to get the access to data and to how running through individual silos. So if this whatever company that is it figured out that smart way, it's great. I think that's hopefully, hey, call me. I want to know how that works out, right? Because it's still the data transparency, right? The data means transparency, and transparency is not necessarily everybody wants, to be honest, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes it's also a screwed transparency, right? We need to cover just for at least we need your opinion on that, right? If a recent study showed, right, that with regards to gender pay gap, right, a recent study showed that in Czech Republic it's 100 years, in France it's 1,000 years. Women need to mate if we continue the path of gender gaps here, right, on the path. Would machine learning be smart AI system would do the job much better than, right? If with human oversight, this will bring us nowhere with regards to equal pay, right? Maybe here an AI needs to take over to accelerate a bit of the direction here. 1,000 years seems to be really, really tough. What do you think on that? Is maybe this differently biased algorithms, right? Maybe then more unbiased, even though whatever that means, right, with regards to gender splits?
I think I have two opinions on that.
All right.
Basically, one opinion is I strongly believe that data-driven decisions or decisions or proposals will be the future in many, many processes and in many, many areas. Saying so that still somebody will have to take the decision, but getting a really good proposal or like one or two really good proposals helps making the decision. So the insight and transparency help making the decisions, and still you have to train your leadership to make the right decisions. So that's one opinion. And the second opinion is that regarding the algorithm again, and I think that there were many examples, right, where the algorithm, like an IBIS bot, for example, like the Twitter bot, got really biased and racist after 2 days. The Microsoft bot, I think it was, where it got racist after 2 days when people were finding out that it learns from getting Twitter feeds, the interaction, right, the Twitter interaction, and then it was a racist bot after 2 days. So I think it's really depending also then how good is the data for the algorithm. And again, the data comes only from what people are doing currently. That leads again to the conclusion that managers need to be
if we're not
trained.
changing our behavior, we're always keeping the trap.
Yeah, right. Maybe the bot will be even more biased than the managers.
Right?
Or maybe it will uncover like that there is a bias and make it more transparent.
It could go both directions. It could be a fraud detection bot or something like that. So I'm not sure, but I think it can go both sides. And nevertheless, even when we are trying out the technologies to solve those problems, we should not forget to actually train the people regarding culture and behavior.
But as you're head of tools and process, right, and that means, right, ecosystems are quite important, right, and we see quite some hip and hype in the world of also the AI ecosystem, but also, let's say, software and development, startups, and, quite some active scene in ecosystems in the digital space, right? And that seems significantly driving further and further, right? And that stretches boundaries also on collaboration, I guess, right? Cross boundaries, cross organizationals, right? Which leaves quite some folks and colleagues in uncertainty. What do we do? What shall other do, right? Do we need to compete or do we need to join, right? How do you see the role of ecosystems also in your tooling? Is that how do you foster these kinds of collaborations? How do you interface, right? I think AI ecosystems and ecosystem partners, as well as collaboration, seems to be key, but it's pretty tricky sometimes, right? How to play that game effectively. Any view on that, on the role of partners and ecosystems in developing solutions?
Yeah, I think collaboration is important on many scales. So on the individual scale, for example, within my team, I say collaboration is really important because everybody has different strengths. And I always say basically also please collaborate with everybody else. And my team is collaborating with everybody else because they then match with the strength of other people again, right? And bring in different views and feedback and ideas. So I think the cross-silo thinking is extremely important to not stay on the same spot, to get up speed, to accelerate, to get better ideas and feedback, but also to create solutions that not only add value within your own silo, but for the company as a whole, right? Because, for example, when now building the incentive processes, I think we have the solution maybe to help our finance colleagues by just adding one or two more process steps into our solution that makes their life easy at the end. So, of course, we could say we are only HR and we don't need to do that. But at the end, I think it will help the company in total, since we can easier implement it and do it now within our solution than just handing it over to finance and letting them care about it. So, and I think that kind of thinking would be important for many other areas within the company as well. And I think it's already lived in many areas, but of course, we can always get better.
Yeah, you just mentioned helping the company and maybe also helping yourself. That could be made possible if you go and do upskilling or take trainings or really try to understand the technology. That was also what you said before. So do you have any recommendations for books or online education courses for people out there that really want to go that way and upskill or learn something new in the field of data-driven organizations and leadership maybe?
I can only speak for myself, since I learned programming some years ago because I was really interested in not only managing IT projects, but also understanding what actually is done by developers, right? What is the effort if I have an idea and somebody needs to implement it? So I actually learned it myself. I'm not sure. I would not like to rate myself on any scale, but I think it's okay. And I spend many hours in different technologies learning those or trying to learn those. And for this, I always use certain video platforms, right? Since it's really easy for me to watch videos and to get like exercises and to be able to go on review and watch it again. Sometimes when I have a busy day, I forgot what I watched last evening. And but I think the most important part is the motivation to actually striving for the change, striving for information and for development, individual development. And then it's the easiest to find something where you can get resources to learn something. If you have the motivation to learn it, you will always find a way, in terms of if you're watching videos, reading PDFs, or getting whatever course on Coursera, you will always find a way to learn it.
Definitely, you're right. So motivation is key and is at the heart of every new start of something. Peter, we are already at the end of this session. Time was flying with you. But before we call it a day, we have a small game. We always do it, the final five. So I have 5 couple of sentence starter phrases and you will just finish them. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, Siemens is
one of the few companies striving for social impact.
I like that. Data readiness is
Far away.
Oh, yeah. Bam.
straightforward, yeah. Innovation is
Innovation is sometimes just a buzzword, but gets more meaningful when you look at the details.
right. Corona has taught me.
The social interaction sometimes is more important than other topics.
That's right. And last but not least, my personal superpower is
Visual ideas I want to implement that are still far away, but that are giving me basically a goal where I can head to.
Oh, make it tangible, right? Peter, thanks so much, for spending this time with you and being that open and being that blended and that also that bold, right? It was a pleasure talking to you, and I think great also for the audience out there. And hey, folks out there, stay tuned. There's so much to come. Stay bold, committed, and open-minded. And we hear it all together at the next Siemens AI Lab podcast. Cheers. Thanks.